All right, guys, we are just 3 days away from the American election. How desperate are sellers on BAT to sell their classic and collectible sports cars? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some results on the listings that we analyzed on the last episode and new predictions. This is Bid Nerds. The bidding starts now. Bid Nerds is your YouTube card game show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new live episode of Bid Nerds. My name is John Polnik. We are coming to you live, like I said, from the Container Park in downtown Las Vegas, along with my partner, Michael Deeb. He's right over there. There he is. How you doing, Michael Deeb? He's in San Francisco. What's going on over there?
Excellent, JP. I'm excited. I'm tired for no reason, but man, as soon as we go live, I'm like fired up. So let's get into it. We got so many cool cars. And yeah, it's things are a little weird, but we'll see if we can make sense of it.
I think it's a good night to drink on this show. Hey, listen, let's if you are new to the show, welcome. Yeah, I know. I'm definitely gonna I should have brought the whole bottle over here. I just poured my Alfa.
Put a nipple on it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, you know, some of you guys are probably watching football, but now is the time for cars. You've been waiting all weekend to do this. This is Bid Nerds. Look, we go through and we find the most interesting listings from Cars and Bids, P-Car Market, and mostly Bring a Trailer. We analyze those interesting listings and we make predictions. That's what the show is all about. So we are going to get to reconciling our predictions from the last episode. But before we do that, I am kind of curious on this question. It's like, it does seem like people are kind of desperate out there, Deeb, when you're watching auctions, when you're looking at the responses to questions in the comment sections, there's a little bit different vibe than we've seen lately. Have you noticed that, or is that just me? What do you think?
Yeah, I think any car that's listed right now is desperate, to be honest. I mean, why on earth, if you have a car, are you listing it right now? Like, you know, and again, I just represented a car the other day, but we tried really hard to get that thing open and closed well before the election. And of course, you know, the way things take time, John, we barely had a week between close and election day. And I've got to tell you, man, right up until our closing hour, I was clenched. And yes, I just like all these cars that we're going to look at now. Why are you listing right now? Like, you're supposed to be experts in the market.
Some of them are actually going to be closing on election day. I don't know if I'd want to be holding the bag. Listen, I just got to say something about the election. I'm not going political, I promise. I know I do that sometimes. But don't share a picture of your stupid I voted sticker. Nobody cares. Don't virtue signal. You don't deserve a cookie for doing something that you should be doing anyway. I mean, just stop with your I voted sticker. If your motivation for voting is to get a lollipop and something that you can put on your shirt, sit this one out, okay? We don't actually need everyone to vote. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I give blood at this one place that has the best donuts. I mean, it's the best donuts and orange juice in the city.
Right?
And
I mean, that's
such good
legit,
donuts.
Okay, you know, if like donate some plasma and get a snack, all right. But you know, I don't need a stupid sucker from when I feel like I am a sucker. Here is one bit of advice for the United States and whoever runs the elections. Why are we doing this exactly 6 months away from the IRS tax date due? Why don't we do it like I feel like there's a reason why it's 6 months from now we actually pay our taxes. It should be just like vote on the back of your tax return. How different would the results be if that were the case, huh? You have to write a check, like endorse your check and write the names of the people you want elected. I think people might make some different decisions. All right, off my soapbox. Seriously, don't show that stupid sticker. You look like an idiot. Do you really need someone to pat you on the back? Yeah, all right. Let's get to some reconciliations. My partner Michael Deeb actually sold a car on Bring a Trailer last week. How'd that go, Michael Deeb? What car was that? What were we talking about here?
You know, in football, when you score a touchdown, they say act like you've been there before. But now, JP, stupendous result here. Let's check in on my 2011 Porsche 911 Turbo S Coupe listing that was on Bring a Trailer. This car is a car that I sold when I was at Godden Porsche in the sales department to a really great guy who lives in Idaho. He's had the car, and literally, JP, This guy put 15,000 spirited miles on this car. He did not commute in this thing. So every one of those miles were the kind of miles you and I would like to drive. So out of Ketchum, Idaho, showing 31,000 miles on the odometer is this beautiful Turbo S in Guards Red. An Evo MS tune, a Sharkworks, and a second set of HRE 19-inch center lock wheels. The chosen wheel for the car when it was new is the RS Spider forged wheel from Porsche. And in the black on the Guards Red, JP, I got to tell you, it looks pretty savage for a 997.2 turbo. So, JP, I want to thank the Nerd Herd for incredible engagement. JP, we got into it with a bunch of people, and it was really fun. Lots of positive feedback, lots of good engagement. And, of course, the car did really well. JP, I did not bid on the car, but you gave us a bid of $119,997 for a closing price. We had David Whitlock, who writes and produces weekly, not even weekly, daily during the week, the Stuttgart Market Letter, which, if, by the way, you are not familiar with this, go Google Stuttgart Market Letter, take it to their website, and sign up for the letter. If you're a fan of the Porsches and you want to keep track of the market, I read it pretty regularly, and it helps me find interesting cars for us to cover because David is just scouring the stuff. So he does a commentary on the results of the auctions for Porsches in the marketplace, and it's a great way to keep track of the market. So if you like to collect these cars, it's a really usable tool. David was our guest host, third nerd. He came in at $115,000. And Classic.com said that the average price for a 7.2 Turbo S is just $107,000. JP, our car hammered for $121,000 where it sold on 37 bids. And the very next day, David commented in the Stuttgart Market Letter, notable sales and no sales. He does 3 paragraphs. We were one of the 3 notable sales of the day. He said, I was on Bid Nerds last night, and I got to tell you, I guessed that this car was going to be in the $110,000, $115,000 range, and boy, was I wrong. Our car hammered for $121,000, which was a high sale for a 7.2 Turbo S for the year. So in November, we set the high water mark for the Turbo S, and that made me feel very proud. Obviously, something I ran and bragged about to the seller. So, JP, I want to thank you for allowing me to cover the car, and to the Nerd Herd for all your great feedback and engagement to make this very successful. I really appreciate you guys helping me get this one over the line. John, standing ovation. It was an excellent, excellent result. Thank you.
Congratulations. It really was a great sale to watch. It was fun to see the bids come in. It's one of those things, Deeb, I was a little concerned because you had such a high bid early. Someone had bid 95,000 or something like that.
Basically.
The first day, which, we're not going to talk about what the reserve was, but I'm privy to the reserve, and I know it was pretty darn close to it. You had to have felt safe, but a lot of times, usually with BAT, you see a doubling on the last day, unless there is a really, really high bid early in the auction process. A lot of times that scares people off. Someone will come in and, the estimated value of a car might be $100,000. Someone comes in and bids $80,000 or $90,000 on the first day. It scares a lot of people off because a lot of the people that think that maybe there's a deal to be had, or maybe this is a car that they might have wanted. Oh, well, people are already bidding this high. It's going to go crazy because it always doubles on the last day. But sometimes that doesn't happen. And I kind of wonder if this car hadn't gotten such a large bid right away, would that have resulted in an escalation effect that would have carried the bids higher than it wound up going? Or are you happy that you got that large high bid early in order to kind of, prime the bidding and get it going up to where it ultimately landed?
It's such a mixed bag of questions. You know what I mean? Initially in the first 24 hours, JP, we got up into like 90 grand. And so it takes a lot of pressure off early on that I have to explain or hold the emotional hand of my client and say, hey, don't worry, we're going to get there. We were already there in 24 hours, but then nothing happened for 5 days. So now you're on pins and needles going, hey, I still need 2 more bids to hit reserve. And then we can exhale and relax and then wait and see what happens. So you're on pins and needles. Believe it or not, JP, we didn't truly hit the reserve, like actually hit it, until the clock actually melted down, and so then I announced the bidding was off. So yeah, John, I don't know. I definitely appreciated that we had early action because it took a lot of tension out of my stomach in this household for the week, which was great. But no matter what, you're all like, based on my experience when I'm representing a car, boy, when the clock starts, you're just like, is anybody out there? And all I hear is crickets, even though, there's people waiting by the mouse to make their calculated click. I'm just waiting for somebody to show up on my computer that they did it. Ultimately, JP, we had 3 legitimate buyers that all put in multiple bids, and they fought over the car for about 10 minutes. And then the 2 guys that all bowed out politely, where they come on and hey, thank you. That was really fun. I'm out. And I always think that's a pretty classy thing to do, to just announce that you're not going to keep bidding. I don't think you have to do that. But just, I don't know, there's a nice touch to that I think is very, we're all playing in a fair, realm here. I don't know what the right word is, but arena. And I just think that's really cool. So they did that. And then the guy won, and all's fair in love and war. And we, like I said, because of the fight, the 3 bidders that absolutely went after it, we got over market value for the car in today's market. So great result.
Great. Congratulations. And congratulations to Gerd in the Nerd Herd, who of course got another Yahtzee. He is the GOAT, man. I don't know. He just keeps knocking it out. How the heck does he do it? Congrats. Everyone's giving him
anybody else
back.
Anybody else besides me notice that GERD is a 4-letter word? I'm just saying.
Well, and you had to have been happy. It's like he set the watermark, and everyone's like, oh, we got to give him a Yahtzee. All right, what do you guys think of the result of Michael Deeb's listing here? His Turbo S997.2. Was that well bought? Do you think that this price represents a price that this car is actually worth, or do you think that's a discount? Let us know what you think in the comments, because a lot of cars have been off this last week, especially going into the election, and we are seeing some serious desperation out there. We made some more predictions. What was the next car on the list, Michael Deeb?
All right, JP, we covered a 1986 Alfa Romeo GTV 6 that is an alumni listing based out of Sarasota, Florida on Bring a Trailer. Beautiful car in the champagne metallic color, which is 46,000 original miles. The big news here, JP, is the car looks pretty clean. It's got these very unusual 15-inch Alfa wheels and this incredible period correct body kit that is not a common sight when you see these cars hit the secondary market. Now, these cars have never truly been collectible. They've never really brought collector money, but they are very good handling cars, and they're really fun. And, every once in a while you come across a good one that, despite usually looking like a roach, might run really well. And one of these things, when running well, is a fun place to drive. So this car just looks really cool, JP. I have watched this car in and out of the secondary market for the last few years. It was on Hemmings for a very long time, and I'm familiar with it. It was listed in November of 2022, where it was bid to $20,500, and it failed to sell at that time. Now, remember, the market was pretty hot back then. It has come back to market in the same town, but by a different seller, as an alumni listing. And JP, we all bid on this one. My bid was $26,000, and I confess that I was bidding with my heart, not with my head. JP, you took the under at $17,000, and David Whitlock, who was our third nerd guest host, producer of the Stuttgart Market Letter, David Whitlock sort of split the difference between us, parking it just over JP at $19,000. Classic.com says that the average selling price of one of these is about $22,000, which seems kind of high, because this looks like a nice one, and none of us were sure this car would break 20, which was very astute. JP, David Whitlock, Mr. Porsche secondary market, seems to know the Alphas pretty well, because our car hammered for $19,750, where it's sold on 21 bids. Now, a couple things to unpack here. First of all, David missed a Yahtzee by $750. Not bad for a first timer. Second of all, it hit a hammer that was essentially about $1,000 cheaper than where it hammered 2 years ago. But this time they took the money. It sold for that number. Now we're in a very different market. We're in a totally different market than we were last year. And last year was a completely different market than the year before. We've been on a softening over the last 20 to 24 months. And this really represents this. This, to me, JP, is a catastrophic failure. This guy should have taken the 20,522. One, based on inflation, that would have been more money. And then two, to hold on to it for 2 more years and then let it go for nothing. This is a bummer. In every way, to me, this is a failure. I personally think that in a good market with better representation, this should be close to a $40,000 car because we just don't see GTV 6s this clean. But I think this was, an average to just below average. It's not a catastrophic cars and bids or P-car market listing. But I just feel like when you have a unique car, you have an opportunity to get creative, hire a real photographer, and do something fun to sell, as you say, JP, the romance. And I don't think that was done here. And then this result shows it. And this guy took his 2 lumps on the coal because he accepted what I think is an unacceptable bid for the caliber of the car. So to me, it's a bummer all around. JP, what's your 2 cents on this one?
Well, I gotta love the Nerd Herd because you guys went on to the listing and told everyone to check out the nerds. And the owner of this car actually hopped on and left a comment. And, it's interesting because he actually has some insight to this, his motivation. He says, "Hey, our Alfa Romeo, I appreciate the words." He didn't say kind words because I guess maybe they weren't that nice to it. Maybe he didn't like my whole thing about it getting one of these is like eating McDonald's and having to be close to the bathroom all the time because you're worried. That said, he said, "It's a great piece. Never really wanted to sell it in the last 2 years, but tomorrow someone is about to get a good deal. We are ready to lose money. We have had a lot of fun with it. Can't win them all." So looks like the seller is happy. I mean, I don't think he did that bad. Yeah, it's a loss compared to a couple of years ago, but he got 2 more years out of driving it. What's the delta between what he would have sold it a couple of years ago and now? You're talking a couple of grand, right? $2-3 grand. At least in that amount of time, he had a cool Alfa to drive around. And look, hopefully it didn't cost him too much in repairs. As long as it didn't break a bunch of times in that time, he should be fine. Let's see here. What was it? Andy Stahl, I saw him at the Las Vegas Concours over at the Wynn. He's hanging out in the Nerd Hut. How you doing, Andy? He says it kind of reminds him of the factory body kit on the 16-valve Scirocco. I think that's a good take. It does kind of look like that. I think it looks like a Zender kit, if you ask me. But and
that might be a Zender kit.
Yeah. But hey, a lot of fun. Somebody's got a really fun car. As long as they don't buying something like this is great because this is a great enthusiast car. They're not as unreliable as we joke around. I mean, if they're well kept, they're going to be okay. And for less than $20,000, you got a really cool looking car that's going to get as much attention at the Cars and Coffee as any 911 that's worth 10 times or more. Not to mention out on the back roads, you're going to be having a great time out there too, as long as you don't have to put it on a flatbed to get it home. Let us know what you guys think of the results of this little 86 Alfa. It looks like the seller was a little desperate. Sounds like he needed some money, and he was okay with that. We have another car that we made a prediction on, and this is where... Yeah, the results on this car, I would normally say are shocking, but I'm just not going to go there because I think we all kind of expected the results of this particular car. Michael Deeb, what am I talking about?
All right, JP, this is an alumni listing on Bring a Trailer, also a premium listing. We are checking back in on the 2019 Porsche 935. Now, JP, before you get too excited and think you and Rochelle are going to park one of these in your underground garage, this is a non-street legal track-only car that pays homage to Porsche's outstanding turbocharged race cars of the 70s, the 935 that was affectionately referred to as Moby Dick. This is the 49th numbered of 77 examples produced for the 1 year only in the 2019. Our car has come publicly to market and sold twice before. Notably, it sold on Bring a Trailer back in November of 2023, just a year ago, for $1,626,000. But the big news here, JP, is nobody's ever driven this thing. it is currently showing, as it came to market this time on Bring a Trailer out of Atlanta, Georgia by Merit Partners, just 159 kilometers from new. That is exactly 99 miles, which is just really interesting that somebody's got this incredible car and that they probably trucked it to wherever this is, in the Big Apple.
That's Manhattan,
to take,
that's downtown right there, yeah.
Photograph it. They might have only driven it for like 1 or 2 photos, but the rest of them are just, staged closed road shots in some of the most iconic places in New York City. So very dramatic car, incredible performance, and only a few lucky people in the world will ever get to drive one of these things. But JP, we say this all the time about the most incredible supercars, is a lot of guys just speculate on their value and they don't actually use them. And to me, that is criminal. So John, this car has come to market. It's a different market than it was last year. And John, despite the flashy photography, I do think that this car has been seen a few too many times before. So my bid was just $1.3 million, where I thought it would fail to sell. Surprisingly, you took the over at $1,359,350. And then David Whitlock, the writer of the Stuttgart Market Letter, joined us as third nerd remotely from Pennsylvania. He came in just over you, JP, at $1.4 million. And interestingly, Classic.com says that the average selling price for a 935 is $1,500,000 even. And the reason why that's interesting is because our car hammered for $1,485,000 on 49 bids, but it failed to sell. The owner of this car paid 1.626 technically. And he came back in a soft market and basically got $1.5 million for it, which is the average selling price for one of these. But this guy's car has no miles on it. It hasn't really turned any hot laps. I go out on a limb and say this car probably isn't even broken in properly to go do true hot laps or hours of track time and all that sort of thing. So as such, I think this guy thinks he's sitting on a car that has equity from where he paid for it a year ago. And JP, I just think, when you're selling the week of an election in a soft market in the off season, you got to be more realistic. And I'm going to call out Merit Partners and say, what the hell are you guys doing bringing this car to market this week, or even this 2 weeks, as it was a premium listing? This car probably ran for somewhere between 10, 11 days. You know what I'm saying, JP? You still have to do the math and back it out and say, you're closing this car within a week of the election, and nobody really knows what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks in this country. And this is a major investment for somebody. You're demanding top of the market for the model. If you're not going to accept the average selling price for one of these, then you better have the sun and the moon and the stars all lined up and shining down on you with your biorhythms to make sure you have an opportunity to reset a high water mark for the market of your particular model. And Merit Partners, as professionals in the marketplace who deal with a lot of cars that have 2 commas in the price tag, I think this is a failure on their part that they didn't take a bigger meta view of where they're trying to sell and where they're trying to get a top dollar thing. I think they should, to me personally, JP, this car should have either gone to Scottsdale, or as David Whitlock suggested, this car would be perfect for Amelia, I think was his quote. And I wouldn't disagree with that at all. What I would suggest is that selling it the week of the election on Bring a Trailer was the failure, not the car or the condition or the assets.
Yeah, I mean, this car had no business being on sale at all. I mean, I guess it was a roll of the dice or something like that. They're thinking, well, maybe we'll hit it out of the park somehow. It's just, what the hell? I'm just flabbergasted that this guy actually thought that they would sell. It brought good money, 1.48. Why didn't they take it? If they didn't. $100,000 to someone who can afford this car as a loss is not that big a deal. So why were they trying to get this car out the door anyway? Even a couple $100,000, right? What were you doing? What did you need? If you needed the money, that seems like an acceptable cost to liquidate the vehicle. Buddha says that people with this money will have the money no matter who wins. Yeah, but that's true, but that doesn't mean that people are going to be. It still affects how rich people spend money and how poor people spend money. It doesn't, if the economy goes to hell based on the results of the election one way or the other, it will affect how even very rich people spend their money. They're going to either take their money, some of them, depending on what happens, some of them are going to take it offshore. Some of them are going to buy, they're going to try to hedge. They're going to try to, they want to hedge against inflation, or maybe they want to hedge against taxes. There's all kinds of things that could cause a rich person that has the money to say, you know what, a $1.9 million car, a $1.5 million car, if this just isn't the time to do that, I'll do that later. So I think that sentiment is just, frankly, just silly. So, I mean, rich people got rich for a reason. It's not buying at the wrong time, right?
Right.
Well,
so, and depending on what happens, it will decide on, like you said, what they spend on. So they might not want a depreciating asset like this at this time. So
right.
it's
if there's because when you're moving capital around, especially in numbers like that, you're like going, okay, how can I best not lose big money, right? I mean, because it's like if you think inflation is going to go up significantly, you're gonna be like, all right, well, I'm going to hedge my bet with gold or Bitcoin or something like that, or if you think your bank is about to collapse, you want to get that money out of the bank and buy something like a piece of real estate or maybe an expensive car if you think that's a decent hedge. And some people do think cars like this are a decent hedge. I think in the long run, this car would be a decent hedge, just not in the short term, maybe not in the next 6 months, but maybe in the next 6 years, or maybe even just a couple of years. Who knows? I don't know. Talking to the side of our butts. Let's move on. These cars were pretty interesting last week, but really I'm excited to get to predictions because, like I said, some of these cars are closing on election day. How many, talking about butterflies in your stomach, you're sitting there watching one side of your screen going, all right, what are the results going to be from the election? And then on the other side of your screen, you're trying to get a car to sell. I mean, you're going to have a 55-gallon drum of Tums or Pepto-Bismol or something like that. All right, let's get into that anxiety right after this. Hey guys, I got to tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you got to call our friend Steve at Godden. This guy. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about, and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. Hey guys, you're probably looking at your watch and wondering if Bid Nerds will ever end. So you better talk to our friends at Our Smiths to make sure your Rolex, Tag Heuer, AP, or any fine timepiece is in tip-top shape. Our Smiths, fine Swiss repair. All right, we are back and we're here to make some predictions. Are sellers desperate? And does that mean a deal for you if you've got the cash? Boy, there's some auctions to watch. We've got some interesting cars. Shout out to the Nerd Herd who's hanging out with us on a Sunday night. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us live like you guys always do. As usual, not as many thumbs up as we got people watching, so please hit that thumbs up, people. We want to grow the herd. It makes it a lot more fun when you guys are hanging out with us. And if you are new to the show, if you're watching right now, you've never seen this thing, or maybe you've been lurking for a while, but you haven't gone into the comment section of the Nerd Herd, please go in there.
We love our lurkers.
Yeah, we love our lurkers, but get into the herd, man. Introduce yourself and say hello. You'll make some friends, much better people in the Nerd Herd than here on the panel. Yeah. Guaranteed.
Quality.
All right.
Quality.
Deeb, we've got some interesting cars. What's the first car on the list? And is this seller desperate? While you're introducing this one, I'm going to go get more scotch.
JP, we have one of the most eclectic groups of cars tonight. This is going to be fun. So let's get through this. All right. Our buddy Sahan and our buddies Yuri and John all sent me this incredible car that some of you may have noticed. What we're looking at is a 1990 Mercedes Benz 560 SEC that has been built by the company Bespoke, and they did a wide body and a 6-speed manual swap for this car. So this is a premium listing on Bring a Trailer out of Costa Mesa, California, offered by the seller Private Collection Motors. Our car is a domestic car, so it's an American VIN, and is showing 41,000 miles from new. The big news here, JP, is that this is an authentic 560 SEC AMG that has I'm not sure about that. So it's a 560 SEC. It might not have been one of the original 6-liters, but it has been treated to a modern 6.2-liter AMG V8, something that you would have found in like, what's that Black Series, the C63 Black Series. It's basically that motor. So about 500 brake horsepower. And if I recall, that car also has a ton of torque, and it's normally aspirated. So we've got 17-inch 3-piece wheels. You've got the wide body kit, and then of course you've got these beautiful Recaros, and all the rest of the aero with the rockers and the front fender and the chin spoiler and stuff. But they did a number on the inside, JP. If you look at the photos and can maybe speed ahead to the interior, this beautiful light wood and a modern AMG steering wheel. You got the 6-speed manual and a fancy, it looks like it might have a Macintosh or something. Yeah, it's got a Macintosh Bluetooth head unit. I mean, this car has really all the best bits you could possibly imagine. We love our buddy Sahan. This car, as well as I think I know Sahan, this car has to be his wet dream. It is just unbelievable. You got all this cool styling from the 80s, even though it's a 1990. This is 80s styling at its finest. But all the best bits from a modern Mercedes hot rod, and Sahan has a C63. So imagine taking that drivetrain and dumping it in a 560 SCC coupe, and then adding a 6-speed manual. So suspension, brakes, all the interior appointments, all the modern doodads. It's got the motor and the drivetrain. It just looks absolutely fantastic. And so, JP, this car is so unique. This car is so wonderful. And I think this car will have a very broad appeal. I think it'll have a narrow market because of the price. But I think the appeal, there's not anybody that likes like sort of the Radwood or the young timer generation of cars that looks at this and doesn't go, oh my effing God, what have they done and how did they get away with it? This thing just looks amazing. John, the photos underneath the car, all of the bits, the hardware and the cleanliness from underneath the car looks like jewelry. The interior is outstanding, and we know that is an incredible motor that's under the hood. I think this car is set to do very, very well. JP, when you looked at this, what were your impressions? Because we've seen some cool hot rods, but this car might take the cake.
Our friend Buddha and Sahan, if it weren't for those two guys, I kind of would have forgotten about these. Of course, I loved them in the 80s, watching Roadhouse and Patrick Swayze, blowing up the bad guys and banging the hot blonde chick from Roadhouse. Kelly, yeah. But I forgot about this car. This is a car that, there have been a few times over the years, maybe 10, 20 years ago, where I've considered getting one of these, but they were always very problematic. Maybe not one of these crazy wide body jobs, but just a 560 in general. This one, it escapes me why they bring so much money. I'm not knocking the car. I think it's amazing, but every time we see one of these get 6 figures, I just think of the 560 SEC down the street in the alley in some guy's garage that the guy wants $2,000 for, and because he hasn't been able to get it to run for 15, 20 years or something like that. They're so complex under the hood. These are those cars that this early generation, the early 90s, late 80s, these European cars that had a lot of technology in them. It was early versions of that technology. All the smog stuff on these big engines. They're not fun to get under the hood of one, but and I don't mean to lump this in with all the, busted piece of junk regular 560 SCCs, but to me it's hard to separate it. To me it just looks like one of those with a body kit on it, and I know I'm wrong. I would love to get behind the wheel of this car. This one in particular is epic. I could see hanging out with Sir Mix-a-Lot with this car, and he would love it just as much. But man, trying to guess what one of these is worth, there's no way I'm going to be right, because to me, it's at best $35,000, $40,000 car. And I know that's just not the case. I know there's zeros on the end of
10
it.
times
so
that,
what's it going to bring? And is this seller desperate if he's trying to sell it right now? When does this thing actually close?
I think this car is going to retail, JP, and it already looks like it's doing that. So first, quick shout out to our boy Luke Loy 345. which is his handle on BAT. While we're doing the show, JP, Luke Loy 345 is just written "Bid Nerds approve," so he must be listening. So Luke Loy, whoever you are, say out yourself in the chat so we know who Luke Loy is, because I don't recognize anybody's handle. So thank you for the shout out, JP. Here's the thing, and I almost walked myself into this. When we talk about a 560 SEC that has an authentic period correct 6-liter AMG motor, according to classic.com, the average selling price of one of those is $342,000. And that doesn't denote between the standard body and the wide body, of which I think they made variations of both. I would assume that the wide bodies bring more, but forgive my naivety, I just don't know enough about these pre-AMG merger cars, of which this would be the ultimate poster child. Then they took the smaller platform, the 300 CE, and famously made the Hammer. But this is the big brother to the Hammer. Now, the car that we're reviewing tonight started life as a standard 560 SEC and then was treated to a 6.2 liter modern motor from 20 years ago, and so it has 500 horsepower instead of 300 and something horsepower. So this is a complete fresh build and should not be confused price wise with the cars I started to compare it to, which are the AMG 6 liters. This car has AMG stuff in it, but from a modern car, and this is a contemporary build by the company Bespoke. I would assume Bespoke has a good reputation because their work looks outstanding, given these images, but I am not familiar with them, and so I don't know what somebody would have paid to build this car. But based on what I see here, I'm not surprised that the current bid, John, is $286,555 on 18 bids, and it still has essentially 15 hours to go until it closes tomorrow, Monday, November 14th. So JP, just reading the tea leaves and seeing where the bidding is going, seeing that if you're a collector for a car of this nature and you're thinking to yourself, boy, I hope one of those really cool wide body 560 SEC AMG 6 liters comes to market. I have $342,000 burning a hole in my pocket, and this car comes to market. Wouldn't you be left in kind of at a crossroads where you're thinking, I don't have to wait for some old car to come around, and then I got to take it to my mechanic and make sure it's all running right. I've got this car that is freshly restored and has more performance and more features and the same cool look, and arguably, higher touch. I think if you had that kind of money and you had that kind of taste, this car would pose an interesting dilemma. So with that in mind, I think this car gets 6-liter money. It's at $286, JP. My bid is going to be the average price for a 6-liter. I'm going to give you $340,000 where I think it should sell. If it doesn't sell, then I'm assuming that the guy who just built this thing probably paid over $500,000 for it. In my opinion, he paid too much. And in my opinion, he's stuck with the car because I don't think anybody's going to give him that per se. He'd be better off taking it back to Bespoke and Bespoke selling it to one of their customers that's stuck in the waiting list game. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a way out of that. But right now, I think 340 is all it takes to get it done. And I think it's got a chance because it's already at 290. So we're looking for 50 grand more, JP. I don't think that's out of the question in the next few hours. What do you think?
Yeah, there's nothing Mercedes makes right now that I would rather have than this car. This thing is just so badass. If you're like, I want the ultimate Benz, sorry, this is it. And I don't even know anything about it. Just looking at it, we had that Alfa on a couple of weeks ago, made by Alfaholics, and everyone in the comments was saying, "Oh, Alfaholics is the singer of Alfa," and there was like holes in the dash and on the trim where they didn't fill in or do it. It's like it was just shoddy ass work, and I guess Alfas are shoddy ass cars in the first place, so that makes sense. It was definitely better than a normal Alfa, but definitely not Singer quality. This car, on the other hand, looks like if Singer got a hold of one of these, this is basically what they would do with it. We have what's his name, Magnus Walker is coming to town in a couple of weeks with the folks from TWR. They just bought the license for TWR. Was that Ted Weir Racing or whatever? And they're
Tom Walkinshaw.
Tom Walkinshaw. Sorry, my bad. Sorry about that. Hope they're not watching. But they're hiring us to make a film about what they're calling basically a Singer XJS. So we're seeing this kind of thing happen a lot with these older cool cars that it's time for restorations or resto mods, but taking it to the next level. This seems like a much better bet than a Jaguar XJS. Like, nobody cares about Jags. There's no Jaguar XJS that anybody actually wants. Whereas there are versions of the 560 SEC that people are already paying big bucks for. So why wouldn't you make it take one to the next level? So yeah, this thing is really, really hot. About the only Mercedes I could think of that maybe you'd want more is Andy Stahl has an SLS convertible coming for sale, and we're going to take some really good pictures of that.
Good segue.
Yeah, this car is gonna bring a little bit more than that. How much do we think it's going to bring? The nerd herd is all over it, everyone's saying above 300. So I guess the question is, how much over 300? It doesn't look like the seller needs to be desperate here.
Yeah. So JP, my bid was 340. What's your bid?
Oh man, it's time for a bid. Yeah, I'll go a little under that. I'm going to say 330, 560. So yeah, however that works out for the total number.
$335,600, and that's not bad. You're about $4,000 under me. So you got yourself a lot of real estate between you and 300, and that is where most of the herd is at. This will be an interesting result. Like I said, according to classic.com, you could buy an authentic 6-liter AMG from Period for $340. So would you, if you had that kind of money and this car is sitting on your computer, which would you rather choose? And I think at $340, that would get this car done. So pretty badass car. I love everything about it. And that's not typical. It's a lot of resto mods don't rub me the right way. They can tend to be very subjective, and I'm super effing opinionated. But man, I dig this car. Sahan, Yuri, John, great find. Super cool car. This will be an interesting result. I can't wait to see what happens.
Philip Craig and the nerd herd. I didn't mean to insult your XJS, buddy. Sorry about that. I actually do kind of like XJSs. I just wouldn't. Nobody's spending big money on them, that's for sure. I think they're great value. You can find those with manuals. Find a manual. All right. What do you guys think this 560 SEC will bring? Will it bring all the Patrick Sweezy squeeze, or is it going to FTS under 300,000? Let us know. And do you think the election will affect the result? That's the other thing too. What date is this one closed, Deeb? You told me already, but I forgot.
The Mercedes closes tomorrow, 14 hours from now.
Okay, so the day before the election. So that's not exactly on the day. Things will, the apocalypse probably isn't scheduled till Wednesday. All right, what's the next car on the list? What do we got?
All right, JP. So believe it or not, there is a 1991 Porsche 911 Carrera 2 Coupe with a 5-speed manual currently listed on Bring a Trailer out of Houston, Texas by the seller Rensport Classics, which claims to be a private party, but that sounds like a very commercial name. Nobody asked me. JP, our car is a European chassis spouting or proudly wearing a ZZZ VIN, which is which really shows you that it's a rest of the world car. On the odometer, 99,000 kilometers, which is about 62,000 miles. But JP, the big news here is we have an authentic C2 coupe with a 5-speed manual in maritime blue. The only maritime blue cars I have ever seen in this country are RSs that have been brought in. This might be one of the first ones I've ever noticed that came to market that is just, quote unquote, a basic Carrera 2 with a 5-speed manual in this really interesting and very iconically 964 colorway. So when we talk about 968s, there's this massive like 20 or 30% bump in value if they're painted like, yellow or maritime blue, or a couple other really weird colors, amethyst and a few other special colorways. We see this on 964s time and time again. Red, black, white, and silver cars bring ridiculous money. But man, if you have a cool, rare shade, and this is exactly that, you could be in for a massive bump in value because of the original paint job. And so here we have this car in Houston on a Montana title with just 62,000 miles. It's what everybody wants right now. This car is hotter than hotcakes. It's a C2 coupe with a 5-speed manual. John, I think it's the classic gray interior is kind of a bummer. It's also got standard seats, but it is, I think, a limited slip car. It does have a Club Sport steering wheel and some aluminum pedal covers. It's got air conditioning. But yeah, man, what more do you want? A limited slip maritime blue C2 rear wheel drive manual 964 coupe. This is kind of the holy grail right now. So I think I just thought it'd be fun to watch this car to see if we can quantify a big bump for the color, despite it closing, the week of the election. JP, it's interesting. Our car closes 3 days from now, so this is going to be a post-election hammer. Just so you know, I'm going to spout this out. This car closes Wednesday, November 6th, one day after the election. So, John, what do you think? I understand that, we probably have differing values on whether or not somebody should or shouldn't pay the extra money for the paint job. But do we think that will happen here? Like, does the fear and the softening of the market sort of eliminate the value add this car should have got for the rare shade? Is kind of the question I would throw it over to you with. So what do you think when you look at this car? Do you see this and go, cha-ching? Or do you go, oh, buddy, wrong time of the year, you screwed up?
Well, I mean, Porsche people are dumb when it comes to color, and this is absolutely going to bring more money than a regular colored one. And I do think it looks beautiful, but I wouldn't pay a 10, 20, 50% premium, which I believe this one will actually bring. This color is so crazy rare. Question for you, Deeb. I don't know, maybe you know this. Did the 91s in Europe not have airbag steering wheels? I don't know. Because this one has an RS steering wheel that doesn't have an airbag in it. So I'm just wondering if that wasn't required yet in Europe like it was here in America. And then also, do 964s from Europe just out of the box have a little bit more horsepower than the ones from America? I don't have an answer.
That's a good question. Yeah, our cars are 247 horsepower, and I would be willing to bet these probably make at least 5 more horsepower or something, because they just run on different fuel over there to begin with. I would guess, JP, and again, I'm guessing that this car would have had airbags, and somebody swapped out the steering wheel for aesthetic, that car wasn't born with that wheel. And if I notice, JP, I got to go back to the top photo. It also has the wrong mirrors. It has the later cars mirrors. That's sort of the .2 mirrors that you taught me when we first started doing the show. And so I'm guessing that somebody added the brake vents in the front, the mirrors and the steering wheel and the pedal covers for their own personal taste. And that if you really wanted top dollar for this car, I actually think you should put it back to stock. I don't know that this stuff would hurt it, but I just think that you have a better chance of getting more money if the car really screams stock. And to me, this car screams driver. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I don't know, man. I think all those things may have been different in Europe. I know that, like the European ones may have come out with the aero wheel or the aero
they might have. You might
mirrors
be right.
That year. So that's the thing. This is where you get granular when it comes to figuring out what's specifically right for the car in the year when it's not an American one.
I'm sorry. I thought this was bid nerds and we could just geek out on this stuff and be wrong. Embrace the moronic take, the sophomore take.
We're definitely always wrong. Yeah. When it comes to like the election results, I actually think Wednesday is going to be the worst day of all
right?
Because there's no way we're getting an answer Tuesday. Andy agrees with me.
No way.
So Tuesday, the thing that has everyone on edge is that we're gonna, whatever's going on Tuesday, you're gonna go to bed and it's gonna be completely different when you wake up in the morning, because I don't know, they're gonna find a pallet of ballots somewhere that they forgot about
in Florida. Florida,
right? It's like, where'd these come from? That just happened to be for one person. Nobody. It's just the shenanigans, if they're going to happen, are going to be Tuesday night, late at night. Waking up Wednesday morning, I'm just kind of like going, do you really want to get up on Wednesday morning? Like Wednesday morning is going to be like, hang out with a dog, have a cup of coffee, not turn the phone on, not turn the computer on, just look out the window and enjoy the sunrise or whatever the heck is going on outside, and try to
if it comes up,
if it actually comes up, or it's like, oh, here come the missiles, there they go.
Don't say that. That's terrible. That's
maybe
terrible.
The power will be out from the EMP bomb. I kid. I'm sure it'll be just fine. But look, this is going to be like, as long as the world doesn't end, I think this is the kind of car that, like, I don't know. Buddha said earlier, the people that have the money for expensive stuff will have it no matter what. That's true. But I think their buying movement maybe is still going to be affected by things like the election and what's going on outside. But this is the kind of car where people won't care what the hell's going on. If the bombs are inbound, they're like, I don't care if it's the end of the world. I got to have this blue 911 because some guy is losing his mind that this car is available right now because it's blue. And that's it. The fact that it's this color is making people's underwear crinkled up and wrapped around their foreheads, and they've got goggles on. They're like in their bunker. They've got their rations for the next 10 years. They don't care if it's going to be nuclear winter. They're like, I have to have this blue car because I've paid up. I have a lifetime membership for PCA, and I'm going to get my money's worth. I have to have a maritime blue car. All right, what's it going to bring?
Look at that photo. Go back to that photo for 1 second, JP. Yeah. It's too low in the back and too high in the front.
Does have a bit of rake. Does have a bit of rake.
That bothers me,
the
man.
Smiley.
Come on,
there's some
man.
weird stuff here. Yeah.
Oh, dude, like this is the stuff that keeps me up at night. All right, JP. Our car is listed out of Houston, Texas. It is showing essentially 62,000 miles. JP, it doesn't close for 3 days, but right now the current bid is $99,964. That comes to us by way of just 4 bids. JP, this car's got a ways to go. I personally think that this car should bring $160,000, but not with these assets, not with that rake, not without fixing the, as you called it, the smiley face. I just think you could do a few things to get it to 160, and one of them is not running it during the election. So JP, I wrote my bid at 160, but now that I look at it, when I think about how crazy everybody's going to be glued to their TV on Wednesday and not their computer, I think our car is going to stall out at like 140 and then FTS at that number. I think this guy's looking for 150 or more. And I think he's going to miss it by more than the $5,000 or $7,000 or whatever BAT is willing to cover with their their little program. But John, despite the color, which I think when all the lights are green and all the air is flowing in the same direction, there's no resistance and no hurdles to the sale. This is a $160,000 car. But I think 140, like 138 maybe, I think this car is just going to flatline and FTS. So 140 to you, John. What's your bid?
I think that the world is not going to end on Wednesday. I think that there's going to be a lot of shenanigans, and I think people are going to be glued to their screens, but it's not... We're not in the year 2004 anymore where people are glued to their televisions. People are going to have their TV on, and they're going to either have the news or the podcast or whatever streaming that they're going to be watching and getting their news from. But they're also going to have their iPad and their phone in their hand. And it's going to be one of those types of things that Wednesday morning, it's going to be all over the place. There's going to be this news. There's going to be that news. People are going to be on Twitter. They're going to be on this. They're going to be that. But what that means is kind of like what we saw in the early days of COVID. That was really what blew up all these auction sites, is that people had nothing else to do but sit there in front of their computer. I think that's all people are going to be doing, is being glued to the screens. So why not? I mean, when was the last time you did something on a screen and that was the only thing you were doing, right? I mean, you always have, I don't know about you guys, but I have 10 tabs open up on my desktop. I got my phone, I'm checking Twitter, all these other things.
Why are you bringing up old shit?
I mean, it's like it's going to be a great distraction. It's like, okay, the world's ending, and we're bidding on this car, and they found some ballots. And somebody made a gaffe, and that guy is a different weird color. It's just, I think it's going to help the car. I'm going to say that this car is going to get more attention than it would have gotten otherwise, and I'm going to say 159.64. I'll take the over and see what happens with this car. I don't think the rake matters. I don't think any of the little stuff matters. This car is just so hot, people want it.
If you're right, I'm going to be sick a little bit in my mouth.
I mean, wouldn't you rather I'm right than everything go to ish? I mean,
well, just when you pose it the way you did, my mind is racing with, well, go ahead and bid $200,000 on it. Your first payment isn't due for like 200 years until they rebuild the banking system,
Right. I mean, there you go. You can buy the car, have it shipped, and then, the great reset will happen, and we're all going to be living off the same $2,000, debit card that the government gives us, and that's going to be that, right? And we're going to be eating the bugs, and we won't own anything, and we'll be happy. So, all right. All right. What do you think this beautiful maritime 964 will bring the day after the election? Will the apocalypse help the value and help the final bid price of this car? Or do we think that it's going to sell out because of the election?
One final question, JP, and we'll get off this car, I promise. Do you like the color?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. But like I said at the top of my comment, I just wouldn't pay extra for it. That's the difference. I love the color. And normally I don't really like blues typically. So this one.
Well, that's why I wondered.
Yeah. I think it's like, I like this maritime blue better than all the Mexico or Miami or Riviera blues. Yeah. I think this is the right shade of blue, and it just looks stunning on a 964 or something about it. But
cool.
All right. Own nothing, be happy. So yeah, BAT definitely doesn't like that. The whole socialism thing does not work for BAT. There's just free 964s for everyone, even though it works. I think that's what I just saw a campaign commercial that said, if the other person is elected, there's no 964s for anyone, but if I'm elected, 964s for everyone. Save the squirrel. Okay, let's see here. What's the next car on the list? We got to move.
Remember at the end of Deeds, everybody got a Corvette. All right. So JP selected for us a car that is definitely going to sell on election day. It is this 1991 Honda Accord EX Coupe that is actually on Bring a Trailer. Imagine that, JP. Out of course, Snohomish, Washington. It's a 146,000 mile, 2.2 liter, 16 valve inline four, made into a 4-speed automatic transmission. How many of us in the nerd herd have miles galore in a car exactly like that one right there on your screen? This car is running no reserve on BAT out of Washington State. John, this is, it's so funny because we think about BAT and it's like all these exciting, dreams and fantasies and sports cars and exotic cars. And I look at this car and all I see is the word transportation. Like when this car is driving, it's not like, oh, it's in motion and it's like doing dynamics or whatever. It's just traffic. Like that, all that car is just a variable I have to get around on my way to wherever I'm going to have fun. But JP, very interesting for you to bring this car up. What a very unusual listing. I remember in the early days of BAT, JP, when they constantly refuted cars that you would try to bring to market. Namely, you had some really cool E1 platform Cayennes with manual transmissions, and BAT shunned you and like basically wouldn't approve your submission because the car wasn't interesting enough for their audience. Well, a lot has changed since Hearst Media bought the company for, the whispers was like $60 or $66 million whenever that transaction took place a couple of years ago. And those whores in New York have pulled their shorts all the way down to their ankles, bent completely over the desk, and now they let guys like Car Chasers, the seller in Snohomish, Washington, bring this kind of garbage that you would only expect to see on Cars and Bids to BAT and clutter up our channel full of beautiful maritime blue 964s and 935 Moby Dicks that are photographed in downtown Manhattan. So a very interesting, because it's so pedestrian, listing on Bring a Trailer. JP, is this car a sign that the end is near? Running no reserve.
I mean, look, normally BAT can fill up their listings no problem, but they're probably like, look, we're only going to take this car if you let us list it on election day. Otherwise, get lost. I mean, you got to figure slim pickings to fill up that roster on November 5th. No, look, I think this is the perfect apocalypse car. I mean, this is the kind of thing that it's not interesting, it's not exciting, you're right, but they are actually nice cars. Remember how nice these were in 1991? How big, this was a sought-after car. This era of Honda was just they're lovely to drive. It's not like when I think of just bare bones transportation, I'm thinking of a Nissan Sentra or a Buick Enclave or something that's just like soul killer. These actually have a little bit of squeeze to them. They are front wheel drive, but they've got a little bit of power. This is a 2-door version. It's nice and clean. It comes from an era of design where they didn't have to have a radius on every stinking corner. I actually think this is a lovely car, and it's the kind of thing that people always ask me, what's like a 2-car solution, right? That's the DWA, our friends at Driving While Awesome. They always say, if you could have only 2 cars, you spend X amount of money. Let's say you have $100,000 and you can get 2 cars. Where are they going to be? I'm going to spend $4,000 or $5,000 on something like this that will never break and never require any maintenance and will cost nothing to insure and sips gas and is invisible to cops, and then I'm going to spend the rest of that $100,000 on a cool-ass sports car. It's like, why would you spend any money on an SUV or some nice daily driver or like a Tesla as your daily or something like that? You could buy this car. Like, people talk about buying EVs and, I'm not going to spend, they may be a little expensive to buy, but I'm going to save all that money by not having to pay gas. Well, look, buy this car. It's going to last as long as any brand new EV, and yeah, you'll have to put gas in it the whole time, but you'll still wind up being thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in the black versus being in that EV or anything else that's nice. I just think this is a good car to have in a world that might be ending. What do we think it's going to bring, Deeb?
All right, JP. Our car closes in 2 days on election day. Yeah. And JP, just to put a fine print on it, our car closes basically, it's an early close. So 10 a.m., which I actually think probably helps it to a certain degree. I don't know, who knows? But it's running no reserve. It's at $3,100 and it's got 7 bids so far. JP, when we looked at it, it was in the 2000s. So it got another bid. It's up to 31. I put $4,100. But the more you talk about the car, I cannot disagree with anything that you said. Everything that you said is true. My girlfriend Laura had one, and like I said, I drove that car a ton. So I'm going to put another $1,000 on my bid. I do think this car gets to 5. So I'm going to go $5,100, and of course it's going to sell because it is running no reserve. The caveat here, JP, is that it's closing on election day, but somebody's going to take home a reliable car that they could put, arguably, JP, another 150,000 miles on with just routine maintenance. So, JP, $5,100. Are you going over me or not?
I'm going to go way over you on this thing.
Really?
And say it's the car that, look, if it's the apocalypse and you got to drive to your bunker, do you want to drive your nice car to the apocalypse, or do you want to drive this beater? Nobody's going to look twice. I'm going to say, here's my number. $10,776. It's the election special.
What?
1776.0. There it is. That's a little play on 1776. Does that number work? Something like that. Yeah, we're gonna have fun with that.
$10,760, huh?
76. 776.
Yeah.
Like 1776.
Okay,
that's our country's birthday. Maybe you know that. Maybe you've heard of it. Right,
I didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on me.
We'll see you guys on Wednesday night if the world hasn't ended.
Peace.
Thanks so much, guys.
Peace.
Bye. Hey, guys, you're probably looking at your watch and wondering if Bid Nerds will ever end. So you better talk to our friends at Our Smiths to make sure your Rolex, Tag Heuer, AP, or any fine timepiece is in tip